Dixon with another edition of This Day in Black Baseball History. Of course, this is the January 1st, 2026 edition of This Day in Black Baseball History. Getting some water here. Hey guys, I'm just wondering, I don't know if anyone's ever even attempted to do what I'm doing now, which is to come to you daily with information related to the Negro Baseball Leagues that comes from many years of speaking on this topic all across the country, researching, having written books, won awards, interacted with a lot of people, not only ball players and their families, but other authors and libraries and historians. Oh man, it goes on and on and on. But I don't know if anyone's ever attempted to do this, so I'm doing it because I think it needs to be done. And it's not like I'm so super great at this, but one thing about it is I can talk about it. And if you like this kind of interaction, I say go ahead and subscribe. I know there are guys that who are listening, but they're not subscribing. It's always a lot of people sitting out on the fence listening. But one thing about it, since I've been doing this history, it's always been very difficult to get the recognition for your work, especially if you're an African American writing on an African American topic. You think it would be easy, but no, it's a challenge. And many people do not want to give you the respect, but they'll be happy to borrow from your work and then write a book related to it as well. Over the years, I've met some interesting people, and I've talked about them. One guy I'm going to talk about today, a guy by the name of John Hallway. If you don't have a John Hallway book, one of his books in your library, and you consider yourself to have a good library related to the Negro Leagues, I don't think you have a good library. You need to at least have maybe one, excuse me there, maybe two John Hallway books. So just keep that in mind. John Hallway. And here's a couple of selections. You can try maybe a Satch and Josh. Another one he had was Black Ball Stars. Black Ball Stars is another one. He actually produced a book, and boy, you don't see this one around too much. This one he signed to me, Kick Mule, and he had tried to write a couple of movies. So he took his scripts and put them into books. And so this book has his movie scripts that he hoped that would get published and maybe a movie done someday. Of course, John Hallway passed away in his 90s. And when I first started conducting history on the Negro Baseball Leagues, there were two people that I talked to. It would be Jim Riley and John Hallway. And then those are the two people that I talked to who are actually engaged in doing some history. Robert Peterson had a book called Only the Ball Was White, but he wasn't active at that time. Did talk to Don Rogerson as well. Get a drink of water here. So, yeah, that's it. So I'm not going to waste too much of your time. I'm going to go ahead and get into some of these facts with the new year. All right, so let's go to work. Okay, January 1st, 1900, Webster McDonald, manager and pitcher for the Little Falls, Minnesota team, the Philadelphia Stars, and other teams, Chicago American Giants is one of those, is born in Wilmington, Delaware. And he is certainly one of the all-time greats. I wrote about Mr. McDonald when he played for Rube Foster at the Chicago American Giants. That was prior to him going to Little Falls, Minnesota, where he built up quite a record out there. In Little Falls, Minnesota, man, of all places. Can you imagine that? Little Falls, Minnesota. So he was there. And also, if you look at John Hallway's book, Voices of the Great Black Baseball Leagues, that was another book he had. In that book, there's an interview with Webster McDonald, and he pretty much exposes Eddie Gottlieb, who was the owner, de facto owner of the Philadelphia Stars in the 1930s. And I wrote about this in my book, The Dizzy and Daffy Barnstorming Tour, Race Media and America's National Pastime, which really digs deep. And so if you go and look in that, that book, you will find some interesting things about Eddie Gottlieb. And actually, I don't know if you knew this. Eddie Gottlieb was the booking agent behind the Philadelphia Stars, uh, uh, controlled that team quite a bit. He could even tell you to tell who's going to be pitching. I think he would had money waged on the games and things like that. And in that whole interaction, uh, he did some things that I don't think that are that great. Okay, so but he definitely was a force. And the only other thing I might mention that in the NBA today, the Rookie of the Year trophy is called the Eddie Gottlieb Trophy. But most people don't know about Eddie Gottlieb. And of course, in my book, the Dizzy and Daffy Barnstorming Tour, Race, Media, and America's National Pastime, I dig deep. All right. So somebody says, Happy New Year, Mr. Dixon. Thank you very much. And always let me know where you're contacting from. Somebody said, did the MLB I guess that's baseball, have territorial picks like the old NBA? Well, I know about the Negro Baseball League, yeah. Mostly, I'll give you a good example. The Kansas City Monarchs territory was Kansas, Nebraska, even out all the way out to Colorado, out to Denver, certainly Missouri. So if you came into those territories, you wanted to interact with the Kansas City Monarchs because they knew all of the principal players. And when I say principal players, these are the people who can book your team into certain cities where you can make money, right? And so you needed to connect with Tom Baird, especially, who did most of the booking for the Kansas City Monarchs. J.L. Wilkinson didn't do as much as Tom Baird in that aspect of the team. So yeah, certain teams had territory, but it wasn't like what they had in the American National League, because those guys would sue you if you tried to come in their territory with some of your players. So, all right. So I hope that answers that. Let's go to another one. Let's go to January 1st, 1921. Wilbur Bullet Rogan hit his first home run of 1921 while winning his first game as a pitcher of the year. So he beat Bobby Fischer's All-Stars, and that's out in the California Winter League, by a 7-1 score at Los Angeles with 7 strikeouts and tossed a 9-hitter while going 2 for 4 at bat. So this guy hit a home run and then pitches, gets the pitching victory. So let me tell you something about it. We're talking about a guy right now with the Angels who's a multifaceted home run hitter, and of course he's a great pitcher as well. But do you know the story of Bullet Rogan? And many times when I'm watching the games on TV and they talk about Otani and his ability to pitch and hit home runs, they always go back to Babe Ruth. But I'm telling you, if Martin Diego is not in that conversation, or if Wilbur Bullet Rogan is not in that conversation, then it's not legitimate. So most of these guys, they go back to the old books, the same stuff that I read 40, 50 years ago, and they have not educated themselves further because they don't do very good scholarship, they don't read enough, and they go and get their information offline, or they hope that somebody else is going to provide it for them, maybe a team secretary or something like that. And I know that for a fact because I used to provide these guys with information when I was assistant director of public relations for the Kansas City Royals. And during the game, I would do stats. They used to have trivia on the scoreboard. I would write the trivia questions, put them on the scoreboard. So I know for a fact that they are getting limited information. So hopefully this information will get better. And if people will listen to a broadcast like mine, maybe they will get some more information that's better. And so that way you don't just keep going back to Babe Ruth and giving us that same cup of coffee warmed over. All right. Okay. Somebody asked another question. Did I ever tell you that I'm met? I guess it's I met. Okay. Okay, you're talking about Bill Cash, probably up in Philadelphia. Yeah, I remember Bill Cash. Yeah, most definitely I knew Bill Cash. So are you calling, are you listening from Philadelphia? Just go ahead and let me know, all right? So we're going to keep it rolling, guys. And if you come into the broadcast, let me know where you're coming from. If you like what I'm doing, you want to come back, hit that subscription button. All right, here we go. January 1st, 1925, Paul Quinn College, now that's an HBCU, crushed Little Rock, Arkansas Charter College 53 to nothing in an HBCU game on New Year's Day. This is football action here. And Ray Theodore Shepard, the top African American halfback in the Southwest, playing in his last game for Paul Quinn, scored 3 touchdowns and kicked 4 extra points. In winning, Paul Quinn picked up 26 first downs compared to 7 by Charter College. Now, have you ever heard of Ray Shepard? Ray Shepard was outstanding, simply outstanding. This guy, and so you know what, in the era of segregation, these guys just did not get the ink and they did not get the national publicity. And even going long term, they did not get it. The reason we don't know about these people is because no one's talking about them. So this is a place where I talk about names that you never heard. And I say, don't just take my word for it. Go look up these people. Go ahead. You've got all these magic at your fingertips through AI and Google and all these searches, Yahoo and everything. Go look these individuals up. And that was Ray Shepard. He goes on and plays baseball with the American Giants out of Chicago and the Black Barons out of Birmingham. Simply a great player. Then he goes on to be an academic because he was an academic and he taught high school for many years down in Texas, and he also coached sports, right? So just remember that name, Ray Theodore Shepard. And these guys were outstanding even before these modern day guys. I gave a trivia question yesterday, and man, people struggled to answer it. And all I just asked was, which professional baseball players, African American, received votes for the Heisman Trophy? It was 2 guys, and people just struggle with that question there. So if you know the answer to that, or maybe you got quick fingers, you can look it up. Go ahead and let me know, right? I'll tell you the answer again. So anyway, somebody still come in here. Somebody said they like Tom Brady. No problem with that. He's a good ball player. And somebody said, yes, I am. Said that's from Philadelphia. And what is your take on Gene Benson? Gene Benson was a good ball player. I tell you, you keep following me, I'm going to come in here with some Gene Benson information as well. I had a chance to talk to Gene Benson and Bill Cash. Talk to both of those guys, interview those guys. And here's something else. Pound for pound, guys, you want to hear anybody in this medium and any other medium that has interviewed more of these Negro League players than Phil Dixon. You just can't find them, because I started back when I was 23 years old, guys, and I just this past year I turned 69, and I've been reviewing and interviewing and traveling and meeting people since I was 23 years old. If you can imagine that. I used to get in my car and drive across country and meet these ball players. And if that's why my books are not like other people's books. And there's a lot of people out here, many people who are writing books on the Negro Leagues, and they should not be writing. I'm just telling you the truth. They should not be writing on this topic because they haven't done enough scholarship, first of all, and they don't know the struggle. But they're writing a book because they can get a contract. Okay, that's how it comes. All right. So we're gonna keep it rolling here. Okay, so we just learned about Webster McDonald and of course Wilbur Bullet Rogan, who I think is the greatest all-around baseball player who ever lived. That's me. That's my own opinion. And then you got Ray Theodore Shepard, and we just talked about him. And how about this one? Let's see. How about this one? This is still Winter League action. January 1st, 1926, the Philadelphia Royal Giants touched Charlie Root, and that's going to be an important name, for 5 runs in the second inning and went on to a 7-5 victory at White Sox Park in Los Angeles. And that was a game played on New Year's Day. Now here's another name that you just heard me talk about, Wilbur Bullet Rogan. In addition to going 2 for 3 at bat with a home run. Now remember I told you this guy was like the Shiny Otani. He was the Babe Ruth of that same period, but you don't know him, right? So he had a home run off of Charlie Root. And so anyway, Wilbur Bullet Rogan, he's pitching. He tossed a 10-hitter, struck out 8 batters, and so he won the game and he hit a home run. Bullet Rogan was amazing because many times he would pitch a shutout and hit a home run and practically win his own game 1-0. That's Boober Rogan, guy. We're talking about a bona fide star, a bona fide star. All right, somebody that was simply outstanding. All right, so that's Wilbur Bullet Rogan, and in that same game, second baseman Newton Henry Allen. Now, Newton Henry Allen, I knew him. I interviewed him. He played for the Kansas City Monarchs as well. And he went 5 for 5 with a double and a triple. Now, you can say, okay, who are these? Many times when they talk about the Negro Leagues, they don't want to count these games outside of the Negro Leagues. And they always ask it, well, if they weren't playing a Negro League team, how good was the team? Well, I'm going to tell you how good Charlie Root was. Charlie Root in 1927, now remember this game was played in 1926. 1927, he goes to the National League and he wins 26 games to lead the National League with the Chicago Cubs in victories. But this guy is losing to Bullet Rogan, and Newt Allen's going 5 for 5 against him. And then, the thing is, if you're not really deeply into the Negro Leagues, you say, who is Newt Allen? Never heard of him. Newt Allen from Kansas City. I've talked about him numerous times because I knew him very well. And I've written articles about him. When he passed away, I wrote a full-page article for the Kansas City Call newspaper, the African-American newspaper based out of Kansas City. And I gave just tons of information that people had never heard before. And that was Newton Henry Allen. Okay, so how about this? In Cooperstown, there is no true Negro League second baseman enshrined in the Cooperstown. No true Negro League second baseman. And so a couple of people that I'm going to think about, and I'm just going to mention two, is George Scales and Newt Allen. Why are they not in the Hall of Fame, right? So that is something I want to talk about. Somebody wants to know how Ernie Banks did with the Monarchs. Well, he was there part of 2 seasons. He did fantastic. And I tell you what, he did so well with the Monarchs that when they sold his contract to the Chicago Cubs, he never spent one day in the minor leagues. He went straight from the Monarchs to the Chicago Cubs. And the rest is history. What, he had 512 home runs, something like that. Yeah, he was good. I think it's 512, somewhere in there. Okay, that's Ernie Banks, right? Yeah, and I knew Mr. Banks, had a chance to talk with him on many occasions, and somewhere in my collection I have a picture of Ernie Banks. It's not behind me, but wait a minute, it is behind me. That is the picture behind me. This is right there. That picture right there is Ernie Banks with the Kansas City Monarchs. Maybe if you take a picture of this broadcast, just screenshot it and then zoom in, you'll see. It might be kind of blurry, but that definitely is Ernie Banks, all right, with the Kansas City Monarchs. All right, so let's keep it going. So we had that two events on Bullet Rogan. How about January the 1st, 1927? Okay, and let me spread this out a little bit so I can talk about it here. All right, January the 1st, 1927. Herbert Rap Dixon collected 3 hits, which included 2 home runs in the Royal Giants, that's Philadelphia Royal Giants, 5-2 win over the White Kings in Los Angeles, California. This is Winter League action. And how many people know anything about Rap Dixon? I didn't get a chance to interview Mr. Dixon. He passed in the 1940s up in Detroit. He's originally from Stilton, Pennsylvania. But I did get a chance to interview his brother. So I talked to his brother, and then one of his other relatives follows me on social media. So I hear and lots of stories related to Rap Dixon, but I'm going to give you one that I think you might find interesting if you're a baseball fan. So in one of New York's biggest sporting events of the year, 1930, on July 5th, while playing in front of a crowd of 18,000 people in a benefit game for the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters at New York Yankee Stadium, the stadium, they said the house that Ruth built. Dixon, is a member of the Baltimore Black Sox, hit the first home run by an African-American in old Yankee Stadium. And of course, they went on to lose that game by 13-4. to the Lincoln Giants, and the Lincoln Giants were managed by John Henry Lloyd, had some good players in 1930. So they lost that game, but Rap Dixon becomes the first person to hit a home run. It was a first inning shot, and he hit that home run with Judd Wilson on base, and he hit it off of Bill Holland. All right. Now there's two Bill Hollands in Negro League Baseball, so don't get them confused. There's an old Bill Holland around the turn of the century, and this is the later Bill Holland that's pitching in the 1930s, right? Okay, so he hits the first home run, and you know what? How do you come back? And it was a doubleheader. So what's he going to do in the second game? Well, he returned in the nightcap and hit two more home runs, right? And each time Judd Wilson was on base. So this guy has 6 RBIs, and he hit the first home run in the game 1 in the right field bleachers, and then in the first inning of game 2, he hit another one in the right field bleachers, right? And then and he hit another one in the left field bleachers off of Connie Rector. Connie Rector's out of Arkansas, and that was in the third inning, right? With Judd Wilson on, as I said. And of course, the Baltimore team goes on to win 5-3. And so, anyway, if you don't know anything about Rap Dixon, and hey, my last name is Dixon, because I like his name, right? And I like him as a player. And there's one guy out here right now who is really pushing hard for Rap Dixon to get in the Hall of Fame. And I can think of several players that I feel are qualified to be in the Hall of Fame. And one of them would be John Donaldson. I can think of Cannonball Redding, Bill Monroe, Harry Burns. Man, I can go on and on about some of these players that I think deserve a better recognition than what they're doing. Somebody says it's refreshing hearing a black person can sound normal. I'm not sure what that means. I know a lot of black people who sound more intelligent than me. But certainly when it comes to baseball, hey, I've worked on this subject. So if you want to talk baseball, major league, minor league, Negro league, comparative, whatever, hey, I'm a person that can have that conversation. You can have that conversation with. I will tell you that in 2021, I was on the Hall of Fame committee that selected players to be on the ballot for Hall of Fame induction. So I've even worked with the Hall of Fame in special capacities. And as an author, you can go out and check me out if you want to. Go in and look in the search engines for Phil S. Dixon, and you will see, guys, that I've been working at it. I published my first book in 1992. Matter of fact, I published 2 books that year, 1992. And there's probably somebody on here listening to this broadcast who wasn't even born in 1992. That means I've got books older than some of my listeners. How about that? Okay. Somebody said you should be in the Hall of Fame. Well, I tell you what, I don't think I'll ever be in the Hall of Fame, but if I'm in your Hall of Fame, I'm all right, okay? Because if I can get somebody else, these ball players, to the Hall of Fame, I feel like I've done my job. Because the one thing I wanted to do all my life was to bring recognition to these ball players who never got the recognition that they deserved, all right? So let's go. I've got 2 more. I'm going to jump in here. Let's go to January 1st, 1935. Andrew Lawrence Patterson, a baseball and football star at Wiley College, that's down in Texas, is selected as the alternative quarterback by the National Negro Newspaper Athletic Association, and he finished second behind a guy by the name of Fannie Banks of Bluefield College. Okay, now I said that he was a baseball player, and I've talked about a lot of these guys through the fall here who are doing other things besides playing baseball and doing it and playing at a very high level. So anyway, we're going to go here. And so he signed with the Pittsburgh Crawfords in 1935. This is Patterson. And he was shipped to the Kansas City Monarchs, where he had 40 home runs in 1936. And as a matter of fact, they had 2 players that year. Willard Brown hit 40 home runs. Pat Patterson hit 40 home runs, right? Okay, now in that same year, there's a rookie who was coming up with the New York Yankees. And I can make a good case to show that those 2 guys had a better season than this rookie called Joe DiMaggio with the New York Yankees. But you won't believe me. But I tell you what, you might want to start listening to the things I'm talking about, because I'm going to give you some information, some really good information. So how many people have ever heard of Pat Patterson? Now keep in mind, there are two Pat Pattersons in the Negro Leagues. There's a Pat Patterson from the turn of the century, and he was out of Starksville, Mississippi. He ended up passing away as a police officer in Battle Creek, Michigan. Actually, I've been to his gravesite. And the other was Pat Patterson from Texas. And so Pat Patterson from Texas is the guy who's playing in the 1930s up to the 1940s. So if you're actually looking up some of these names, just know that there's two Pat Pattersons, just like there were two Bill Hollands playing in different eras, right? So yeah, so anyway, that's Pat Patterson, and I do have some listeners. I know there's one guy who listens to me, and Pat Patterson was his high school baseball coach down in Texas, so he listens to me as well. But these guys are starting to get up in age; they're older than me, so so anyway, that's Pat Patterson, okay? And we're going to come and we're going to bring it up a little bit. And somebody's asked me about Coup Papa Bell. My last fact of the day is about Coup Papa Bell, so hang on, I'm going to get to that one. But before then, I've got one more that I want to say before I get to Coup Papa Bell. And this occurred January 1st, 1953. Lynn Jones, a former Kansas City Royals outfielder and Detroit Tiger outfielder, is born in Meadville, Pennsylvania. And the interesting thing, I knew Lynn. I covered the 1985 Kansas City Royals because I had a press pass. So I covered them for the Kansas City Call all season. So I had a chance to go down and talk to everybody. And this is before I went to work for the Kansas City Royals as assistant director of public relations. So Lynn, of course, was on that 85 team. And a distinction Lynn has is he's one of the few players to get a ring as a player, which was the 1985 Royals, and then the 2004 Boston Red Sox as a coach. So he has 2 World Series rings, one as a player, one as a coach. And how about this? He had a brother that also comes up, and he plays for the New York Yankees. His name was Darryl Jones. You ever hear of Darryl Jones? And he played for the New York Yankees in 1979. And if you collect baseball cards like I did, you will find that he's card number 670 in the 1980 Topps set. So this guy had a brother also. And there are many famous African-American players who had brothers. One I'm thinking about is Dick Allen had brothers who played. Who else? Somebody else help me on this. Who else had brothers besides Lynn Jones? I'm drawing a blank. I know there's many. There are many brothers. Of course, Hank Aaron had a brother that played as well, Tommy Aaron. And so there's many more. But just want to share this shit. Got to share this information with you, okay? So, but guys, if you want to expand on the information so you think of any other brothers, just let me know. Somebody said Ricky Henderson. Oh, I talked about him quite a bit in this a few broadcasts ago. If you go and look at some of my replays, you'll see a picture of Ricky Henderson on at least 2. And so I talk about him and his stolen bases and all that he did. Had a chance to meet Ricky on several occasions. And so here's my last one of the day. And I do want to thank you guys. This is a longer edition. Usually I do about 20 minutes. But since it's the new year, I wanted to kick off with just a little bit longer edition, right? Okay, so somebody asked about how did Coup Papa Bell get his nickname. He got his nickname from a guy by the name of Bill Gatewood. Bill Gatewood gave him that nickname. Bill Gatewood is buried in Columbia, Missouri, down there where they have the University of Missouri. Yeah, he lived in Moberly, Missouri. Okay, and I talk about this all the time. Some of these small towns in Missouri and other places around the country, they don't have hospitals in that town. So you have to go to the next largest town if you're sick. And so in his case, he went from Moberly, this is Bill Gatewood, he went from Moberly to Columbia, and that's where he passed away. So he has Columbia as his place of death, but he lived in Moberly. Okay, so here's my last fact. Coup Papa Bell January 1st, 1929, James Papa Bell becomes the first American player to hit three inside the park home runs at AIDA Park in Cienfuegos, Cuba. Cienfuegos, Cienfuegos, Cuba. In a Cuban Winter League game, he homered off for Oscar Levis, Clifford Bell, and Martin Diego. Martin, of course, is in the Hall of Fame. I met Martin's granddaughter and his great granddaughter and where was I at? Rocky Mount, North Carolina, this past fall. Beautiful people, beautiful people. And so anyway, yeah, so he hit off of them. Clifford Bell, there's a lady who follows his broadcast. I think I'm gonna put a picture of Clifford Bell up there, so maybe she'll listen to it. And and so that is James Papa Bell. And people talk about Papa, how did he get his nickname and those kind of things. I'm gonna tell you something about Papa Bell that you probably didn't know. And I knew him very well. I would go down to his house. This is back in the early 80s. I lived in Kansas City, so sometimes I would get in my car and I would go down on a Saturday and interview James Papa Bell. And people would come by, because I would be there for hours on end. We would just talk baseball and you know, you might put on a sporting event on the TV. We watched the sporting event, and his wife would be there, and sometimes she would cook lunch or something like that. Clara Bell was her name, and I mentioned her maiden name in other broadcasts. I don't have it right in front of me right now, but yeah, they got married in 1928, and so I would go down, and you know, here's an interesting thing. People, to show you how people were abusing some of these Negro Leaguers once they got in the Hall of Fame. I remember one time I was at Papa's house on a Saturday, and a guy came by with some bats. He wanted Papa Bell to sign. He didn't bring money. This guy bought some fried chicken and liquor. And I remember sitting there and I tell him, Papa, I wouldn't sign that. I wouldn't sign that. And his wife was saying, I keep telling him all the time, don't accept that. Don't sign these things for these people, because they were simply getting abused. Can you imagine that? And this wasn't a black guy who was bringing these bats. It was a white guy, and he was bringing fried chicken and alcohol. I was there to see. This is not something that I'm making up, guys. I actually saw this. I was there. So just know that by being in a position, and he probably didn't know who I was at all. He probably thought maybe I was just some young guy out of the neighborhood. He had no idea. I should have got his name so I could expose him all these years later. I didn't do that. But I was really insulted that they would do this to my people. You could have at least given him some money. And then probably those bats out there, no telling what they're selling for now that he's passed away, right? Hundreds of dollars, right? But yeah, fried chicken and some alcohol, a bottle of alcohol. I'm not making this up. This is a true story. And guys, these are the stories that you won't get anywhere else, because people who are talking about these subjects, they haven't lived it. They haven't lived it, guys. When you get in your car, and you know what? I didn't have a lot of money. I had a young family. Matter of fact, me and my wife this year, we'll be married 42 years. So we were married, you know, at that time, maybe 3-4 years. Didn't have a lot of money, but I would use my last dollar to go down and sit with people. And then many times I would go down and I would, while I was in St. Louis, Papa would have Tweed Webb come over, or maybe I stopped by Tweed Webb's house. Dickie Ballantyne of the the Boys Club down in St. Louis, which was really active at that time. He would come over. There were many players that would come over to James Papa Bell's house when I was visiting him, and we just have a good time. And man, those are great memories, great memories. So I'm going to go on and let me tell you this, because I think this is really important, because when they talk about the Negro Leagues, they leave out too much. And so here's one fact that they leave out. I mentioned that James Papa Bell married his wife, right, in 1928. They were married until the day that she passed in 1991, 70 years. And there were many black ball players who had these long-term marriages that is never talked about. Never talked about. I dropped the mic after that. But yeah. And I remember going down and Papa Bell's health in later years it was kind of failing. And sometime I would write him, and she said, "Well, he's too sick. I'm replying today," and she would send me back a reply or something like that in the letter. And I would go down, and we'd be talking, and we talk about Cool Papa Bell not doing well with his health. And she used to always say, "I'm sicker than he is," but she didn't look sicker. She didn't look that sick. She was moving around really good, and so she didn't look that sick. But true, true to true to what she said, she passed away before he did. And about 3 months later, he passed away. And you've probably seen this with people who've been married a long time. If one of them passed away, the other one passes away shortly afterward, right? So that does it for me today, guys. So we have started 2026 with a bang. And so I always say, if you like what's going on here, guys, go ahead and subscribe to this page. You're going to get information that you will not get anywhere else. Some of it will be controversial, guys, but I'm an excellent researcher. I can back it up. I can back it up. And I take on all institutions. I take on authors. I take on everybody if I feel like you're not doing my people's history justice. All right? Somebody says, that was a time you stayed married until you died. Well, how about this? I know some people didn't stay married until they died. They were ball players, right? So anyway, yeah, but it was always good if you did. And it's still good if you did. And if you meet the love of your life, why not stay married, right? Okay, I can attest to that. And so, God, it has been wonderful. It's been very eventful. I started these broadcasts back, I think, in August of 2025. So then I kind of honed in on this day in Black baseball history because it gives me a chance to talk about many people that typically aren't in the conversation. So we know Josh Gibson is in the conversation. We know Satchel Paige is in the conversation, and Buck Leonard or Buck O'Neill. We know that these names are in the conversation, guys, but we're talking about hundreds of baseball players whose names aren't getting mentioned. And that is why I decided to do this day in Black baseball history, so I can talk about these guys. So, you won't hear about Connie Rector on a regular basis. You won't hear about Ray Shepard. Ray Shepard is outstanding, guys. You don't even know who he is. But I want to introduce you to some of these people because these are some of the names that should become household names in the future, but they're not household names today. So when I grew up, guys, when they talked about Hall of Famers, I knew about John McGraw and Connie Mack and Christy Matheson and Turkey Mike Donlin and I can go on Charlie Gehringer and I can go on all these names that I knew from following baseball history, but I didn't know my own people's history, and so I'm changing that one day at a time. One broadcast at a time. So, yeah, somebody says Turkey Stearns. I was at an event with Turkey Stearns' daughter in Cleveland this past fall. It was a great event. If you ever get a chance to get up to the old League Park museum there on the field where League Park is, man, that's a great experience there up in Cleveland. And Cleveland's a beautiful city. I'll tell you what, as I travel around, I am amazed at what they're doing to some of these urban areas and areas that just seem like they were dying, and especially if they're on the riverfront, they're really bringing back the riverfront. And Cleveland was one of those cities I would definitely go back, and they're having the National Saber Convention in Cleveland this coming year, so I hope to go there. And then also they're having the All-Star game in Philadelphia, so I hope to be there as well. So okay, guys, I can keep on talking. 40 minutes, that's way beyond where I go. So I'm going to close it out right now. And I want to thank everybody for joining. And this has been Phil Dixon, and this has been This Day in Black Baseball History. And this has been the January 1st, 2026 edition of This Day in Black Baseball History. Hey, we're going to have fun this year, so by all means, subscribe so you can pick me up and you won't forget about me. And thanks for the hearts. Thanks for the love. I appreciate that. And we will be connecting. All right. But thank you, guys, and you have a wonderful day.